The train heaved and rolled pleasantly over the track. We chuffed past dark trees and old castles, barely perceptible, the glare of fluorescent lights from overhead. I was sitting in the back row, Atticus nestled quietly against my lap. The infant stirred and grimaced under the bright light. I suppose I'm a kidnapper now, but I needed to get him out of his current situation. His mother was dangerous, and not just to him. I wasn't sure if she would find us, and I wasn't sure what would happen to me when we were found, but I needed to try. I was willing to lose everything to save him. It was the winter in Germany before Christmas, so the country was abustle with quiet excitement unlike the grim January months. Streams of lights, golden and colorful, adorned old country cottages while we slid through silent forests and pearlescent rivers under the overcast moon. I wished Atticus were old enough to appreciate it, and I wondered if he would ever return to Germany when he grew up and see the same dappled moon in these shushing evergreens. I hoped not. It wasn't safe for him here. My nerves were still settling down after our escape, and I tried to collect myself as memories of the gloomy house and feral screaming welled up from the recent past. She had been awash in drug-fueled rage, and her fists had pounded my back as I fled. She had promised a terrible revenge, that her father would find me and kill me. She had promised that I would return what was hers. I tried to enjoy what would otherwise have been a pleasant trip in the Christmas season. The train was comfortable and modern, with advertisements for German cologne and beers smiling down above smudged windows. A digital banner scrolled the name of the next stop. Almost nobody moved on or off the trains, and I felt pleasantly alone among the few strangers. A human archipelago, one island of many. My reverie was interrupted, and I got the unpleasant, itching feeling of being watched, but when I looked around the train car, there was nobody there with me. It was pleasantly lit and devoid of any other passengers. That didn't help the kneading feeling in my gut, and my anxiety ticked up slowly while I scanned up and down the plastic seats. Even the neighboring train car was empty. A bearded man sat quietly reading, and a young woman was looking out the window with her headphones on. Neither one seemed interested in me. I was in the last car, so I knew there was nobody behind me. I had made sure to sit so that my back could be to the entire train. It took another moment for me to notice that 2 cars away, the passenger compartment was completely dark. That was a little weird, but maybe the power had just cut out in that car. That wasn't unheard of. Nonetheless, I was certain that the watchfulness I felt emanated from the dark car. When our train slipped from underneath the canopy for a moment, the light of the moon revealed a man sitting alone among the darkened seats. I only caught the briefest glimpse of him. A broad-shouldered man in a heavy coat and a beleaguered flat cap which sat awkwardly on his narrow head. His back was to me, so I don't know why I should have felt like this man was watching us. Maybe it was something about the way his head canted at an odd angle, like he were suffering from a terrible neck cramp, or the wild tufts of hair which sprang wildly from beneath the cap. Unconsciously, I pulled Addie closer, and he stirred slightly. His soft, delicate face scrunched up for a moment, and his eyes slid open like a cat's. When he saw that I was still with him through his lidded eyes, he cracked into a contented grin and fell back to sleep. That's right, Addie. You're safe with me. Anyone who's ever carried an infant knows how threatening the world can be. Potential dangers lurk in every alleyway or in every shadowy alcove. When you have a baby, the dark places in the world stretch out for you with long fingers. One gets paranoid. I shifted in my seat and tried to comfort myself. The last thing I wanted was for Addie to sense my tension and become upset. He was always hungry nowadays, and I didn't have a bottle. If he were to sufficiently rouse, he would shortly become infuriated that he wasn't immediately sucking on formula. Babies are notoriously bad at putting the needs of others first. They're incredibly selfish that way. Atticus stirred and let out a groan, and the man 2 cars down shifted in his seat. His oddly shaped head, was he wearing a mask? cracked to the side, and I thought I saw him straining his ear towards us. He turned his head, and a broad nose rolled into view. Surely I couldn't see a pinpoint of light from underneath his heavy brow. I felt as if something malevolent glittered there. The passengers in the car between us seemed utterly unperturbed. I didn't realize how thankful I was for their distant company until our car hissed into the next station, and they departed. The doors chirped 2 pleasant notes and slid closed. Addie and I were alone with the man in the dark car. His silhouette had returned to normal, so that he was looking forward again with his back to me. I started thinking about Addie's vile mother, that tweaking crone. She had spat and cursed and gnashed, wild-eyed. I had been warned not to trifle with her, and that she was a witch hiding among us modern-day mundanes. Her neighbors had told me that she was a hag gnawing on the bones of her victims. Untrue. She was just one more person who had become utterly lost to drugs, so that her only thoughts were of the next and how to get the next fix. Society had deemed this an appropriate environment for Atticus. I had not. Images of pentagrams and black candles filled my imagination. I conjured wildlings dancing in the forest with bones in their hair. I saw bonfires and bony fists clutching beating hearts. Covens and cabals and cults. I thought of her father, who had supposedly been a cruel and vile man. A shepherd leading his flock into ever more bleak territory. A Kmart, Charles Manson wannabe. He wasn't worth thinking about. He was dead. He can't hurt anyone anymore. The man sitting in the dark car started twitching, his shoulders heaved up and down as if he were silently retching. The train squealed dangerously around a corner, and I tried to keep Addie as still as possible. The thought of him waking up and crying terrified me. A part of me was convinced that Addie's cries would break whatever tension hung between me and his silent passenger. If the gazelle bolted, what could the lion do but chase? The thought was ridiculous. Why did I feel so unsafe? We were coming to one of the tunnels on my route home. It bored into the side of a mountain to emerge at the base of one of Germany's lesser-known castle ruins. During the daytime, it could have been a John Constable painting. Now it felt like jumping face first into the dragon's lair. Then the mouth of the tunnel yawned open and swallowed us whole, and the lights in the next car went out. Everything beyond my train car was immersed in total darkness. Our feeble light stopped at the windows as if hitting a brick wall. The darkness outside was so complete that I was certain that the other train cars had vanished, and we were hurtling somewhere else and utterly alone. There were no maintenance lights or catwalks, and I couldn't see the tunnel's exit. I heard another sound float above the rhythmic cackling from the featureless shadow in front of me. Someone's murmuring? I tried to ignore the ambient noise around me, not German or French. It was either someone muttering wild nonsense or some hideous language I had never heard before. The gibbering voice spat consonants faster than should have been possible. It sounded less like a voice and more like an audio recording playing too fast. The sound scratched at me unpleasantly, and I would have covered my ears were I not holding Atticus. Addie stirred once more in my arms and grimaced. I patted him softly and begged him silently not to wake up. Not now. You're safe. I promised to keep you safe. The tunnel spat us out, and the feeble moon offered the barest relief from the utter blackness. The light in the train car in front of us clicked back on our barest second before shutting off for good, but long enough for me to see the man in the flat cap now sitting at the far end of the train car adjoining mine. I hadn't seen him move, and traveling between the train cars was impossible. I know that it wasn't possible for him to have gotten up, leapt from one car to another, and seated himself there. He now sat in the dark, exactly as he had before, only now one dreadful car closer,